Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. Afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. Right on, David. How are you doing today?
Well, now that we're finally connected, I'm ecstatic. It's wonderful to talk to you.
Wonderful to talk to you as well, and I really want to thank you for your time being with me. It's going to be an interesting episode. The program is focused on three main questions. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how did you know that this was the way to go? So tell us what you do for a living, please.
Well, right now I'm an author, and I'm also working with an Alaskan Native corporation as a data analyst, just to have a little extra income coming in. But my real focus is taking care of my wife and doing a little bit of writing.
That's pretty solid. And were you like walking on the street one day and you were like, let me be a writer and do some data analysis in Alaska, or did something else happen there?
Well, that kind of fell into place. I've always kind of trusted God in my career moves and what I was going to do in my life, and he seemed to open up doors. I never had a father growing up. I'll share this with you.
Yeah.
And I never had a father growing up. He left when I was about 9 months old. Spent most of my youth living within 10 or 15 minutes of him. Never made contact with me. So I kind of grew up thinking there must be something wrong with me. My dad doesn't want to hang out with me. So I had a conversation with God one day. I said, I really need you to help me. I don't have a father. So I literally, I literally heard an audible voice tell me one day, I'm going to be your father. I'm going to take care of you. You're not going to need for and want for anything, but you're going to have to be patient at times. I said, yeah, I can do that. So anyway, I've had a very blessed life. I've done a lot of different things. I worked at Disneyland while I was in college. I was a police officer in my younger days in my hometown. I medically retired from there. And then what led me to this chapter in my life was I got married out in Southern California, and my wife at the time had always wanted to go back to Virginia and work for the Christian Broadcasting Network. And I had just recently retired, and I thought, well, what the heck? So there was a grad school, excuse me, associated with Christian Broadcasting Network. And I thought, well, I've already got 4 college degrees. Let me go back and get my master's degree, and we'll take my bride back to Virginia, and she can see if she can get a job with the Christian Broadcasting Network. So in August of '85, we packed up and moved cross country, got back here to Virginia Beach. I went over to the graduate school and thought I better get a job, take care of my new wife and everything. And so I turned in a resume and they said, wow, you've got police experience. I said, yeah. They said, well, the founder of CBN, Pat Robertson, is thinking of running for president and he's looking for bodyguards. Would you be interested? I said, what does it pay and when do I start? And things snowballed after that. I met a wonderful man as one of my best friends, if not my best friend, Jim Small, who was the head of security at the time. We hit it off and eventually hired me. And I had kind of a duplicitous life at the time because I was going to grad school full time. But then when Friday afternoons rolled around, I would get on a plane and fly God knows where with Pat Robertson over the weekend, be his bodyguard. He'd do maybe 15, 20 different political events. We'd fly back into town on Sunday night, and I'd put my student uniform on and go back to grad school. So it was very weird, but that led to me being around Pat for a number of years. I eventually took over the security department at CBN and ended up meeting a lot of interesting people. And then I came to a point in my life where I thought, I need to write a couple books. And so I sat down and I'd get up about 2, 3 in the morning and put in a couple of hours worth of writing and ended up turning out 2 books. And right now I'm working for a wonderful company just doing some data analysis, and it brings in a little extra money and gets my wife some insurance benefits. And so I'm very happy. I'm very productive, and I'm very busy all the time.
That's a pretty fascinating story, and I wanna highlight something about what you said. You said that you decided to follow God.
Mhm.
That was brilliantly said. There is this phrase, believe, and I'm an Orthodox Christian.
Mhm.
There's this phrase that I was never able to understand, and I will probably never be able to accept. The phrase is believe in God, right? This doesn't mean anything. What does it mean, believe in God? The devil believes in God. If you're an atheist and you don't believe in that kind of stuff, that's fine, I guess. But to acknowledge God, well, the devil believes in God. Excuse me. So just because you believe in God doesn't mean that you're following him.
Right.
So you have to believe God. As you did, you followed him. So that was pretty good. And I've noticed something. I wanna hear your view about it, because it's a rather interesting subject. Every single person, every single man is made in the image of God. That's how we're made. All right.
Mhm.
That's what I believe. I'm sure that that's how it is. And we have this internal compass, where I think that's why it's called revelation, because it's being revealed to us what to do and how to do it. And there was only one time that I decided not to follow that. And I really didn't have a nice time, let's say it like that. So in general, I truly believe that if we follow this internal compass, and that's the best way I can describe it, I guess, it's just as an internal compass. If we follow it, we'd be okay. What do you think about it?
I think you're spot on. Following God is difficult sometimes because we always want to take things and wrestle it to the ground. We want to maneuver things in our daily life. We want to be a victor. We want to get the best for us because we're basically selfish
Yeah,
creatures. But sometimes following God is very difficult, and you want to. It's kind of like being behind a slow moving truck on the interstate.
yeah.
It's running interference for you, but it's slowing you down. And the tendency is, I'm just going to pass it around, do it on my own. And it's
Well,
not a wise maneuver. Okay.
it's not, and it's driven by ego, to be honest.
Absolutely.
It's driven by ego. There is this amazing German author. All right, he got a YouTube channel. His name is Eckhart Tolle. I always recommend people to read his articles, because you can listen to what the man says. He's very wise, but this is that insane thick German accent is killing me. So I can't listen to it. And I love the German people, the German culture, food, everything. But Lord have mercy, I just can't stand this thick German accent. So I read his articles. I love the man, but and I always recommend people to read what he's saying.
Yeah.
And he said, observe your thoughts, but never believe them, because all of the thoughts that you have, they're not from God. That's why he said, keep your thoughts into captivity.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
that's why, when you said it's not getting fast enough, according to who? According to God, it's moving just the way it should be. According to you, it's not getting fast enough, and you don't know more than God. And
You're
that's why I'm
absolutely
saying,
right. Absolutely right. Um, I don't want to beat this issue to death, but God has spoken to me probably a half dozen times audibly. I mean, to the point where I had to actually turn around and think, there's somebody behind me. I mean, he speaks to me mentally a lot. I mean, we are in conversation every day. When I was a police officer, I literally was sitting in my police car at 3 a.m, very quiet. The city was asleep, and I heard him tell me, he says, "You're not going to be here in this job much longer." And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy. I love what I'm doing. I'm good at it. I enjoy helping people, and within 6 months, I was medically retired.
yeah,
Now,
and it's all laid out way before even you and I were born.
yeah,
So I really love the fact that you said just follow God, all right? Just follow
yeah.
it.
Well, I'll tell you one more thing, one more quick story, and this one will
Yeah.
put the hair on the back of your neck on point. When I was dating my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, her mom was a very devout Christian. Now, I had just retired from the police department, and I was pretty salty. I mean, I was in a very dangerous city out in Southern California when I worked.
Just
And
for reference, so when you were dating her, you weren't a teenager. You were already a
I
guy with a
was
job and everything.
I got married at 27.
Okay.
So I was probably 26 at the time, and her mom came out. I went to pick up her my girlfriend at the time on a date, and her mom came out to the car and she said, "Would you come in and talk to me for a few minutes?" I said, "Sure." And I knew she was a very devout Christian. And she said, we sat down at the table, and she said, "I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but the Lord woke me up last night and told me some things about you, and I wrote them down, and I wanted to see if they're accurate or not." I
Well,
said,
that's interesting.
"Yeah." And I'm kind of like, "Well, I don't, okay, sure, yeah." And she brought out this little piece of notebook paper, and there were just scribbles on, I mean, just no order to it, just random thoughts. And she started going down this piece of paper, and Danny, it was like she had my resume, my life resume. And honest to God, these were things that nobody on the planet in human form knew about. She knew about my upbringing. She knew about my fears, my goals, my thing. And she went down and down, and I was kind of looking like, what kind of trickery is this, you know? And she said, "What I want you to understand is God really loves you, and he wants to bless you, and he's going to give you the desires of your heart, but you need to be patient, and you need to read your Bible." And she said, "Do you think you could do that?" I said, "Absolutely." And honest to God, I mean, it has fallen into place like bricks in a wall. I mean, just slowly, methodically, I have done so many different jobs that were passions. I when I was at CBN, I got I was in grad school for film. I won a Student Academy Award for
What is CBN?
CBN was Christian Broadcasting Network,
Okay.
and then they had a university attached to CBN. CBN Ministry was a TV studio complex, and they broadcast the 700 Club television show for 30 plus years. It was just a mainstay. It was probably the top rated Christian television show, 1 hour or 5 days a week. And Pat Robertson hosted it. But he also was a big believer in education, and he founded what was then CBN University, but then it changed its name to Regent University. Well, Regent University is very well respected worldwide now. And anyway, I was in one of the first classes there. It was just still in its infancy. I was studying film. I've always been fascinated with animation, and I did a school project, and it was the first animated project in the history of the university to ever win an Academy Award, a Student Academy Award. It was just a little throw together film, but God blessed it. And then I thought, I was working with Pat a lot, and I thought, he's very interested in ministering to children, and CBN's got this television network. They got videotape editing. They've got all the sound systems and recording studios. Why are they not producing animation in house? So I wrote up a proposal, and I sent it into the development people at CBN. I said, "I think you've got all the ingredients you need to start producing animation to minister to kids." And within 2-3 months, they had me setting up a studio, and I built a studio from the ground up. We did ministerial spots and TV pieces. I ended up going to Shanghai, China, and working with 2 studios there. We produced, I co-wrote, produced, and directed 2 1-hour animated specials. One was the Easter story, and one was the Christmas story. And they were seen, to date, they've been seen by probably 1/5 of the world population. These are Christian videos telling the story of Jesus' birth and death and resurrection, produced in communist China and broadcast on Chinese national television. Now tell me that's not God's hand.
That's amazing. Keep in mind that that was in the 80s, and I'm a
Yeah.
huge comic book fan, huge animation fan. Uh, and I know just if I see a movie or an episode, I can basically roughly tell you when it was
Mhm.
made. If it
Sure.
the 70s had its style, the 90s, early 2000s.
Hmm.
In the 80s, they somehow did it perfectly because I love symmetry. All right. After in the 80s, it wasn't like that, but for animation, the 90s, and I love, everybody loved masculine physique and everything, but they did like asymmetrical.
Right.
In the early 2000s as well, 2010s, they kind of have those square faces, which was a little bit off. But the 80s did it perfectly, like oval face, symmetrical figures, handsome
Yeah.
figures, beautiful figures. So you should have picked one amazing time to do that.
Well, it was just amazing to me. Was here I was on a plane flying 18 hours over to Shanghai, China by myself. Didn't speak the language. I've got totes, big bins of production materials. We did the pre-production in at CBN. We'd box it all up. We'd take it over there. And I was by myself. I'm wandering the streets of Shanghai. I don't speak the language. I think I knew how to say two words was thank you and ice cream were the only words in
Nice.
Chinese I knew. And I'm over there producing these animated 1 hour specials. And it was just mind boggling to me how God was so faithful in giving me the desires of my heart. Animation had always been something I was fascinated with. And that was just another little period of my life. And, but you could just see his hand move, and it's just, I feel so sorry for people that don't believe in God.
Well,
I,
you shouldn't really, because God doesn't feel sorry for them. As a matter of fact, that's why He created two spaces:
yeah.
one for those who want to be with Him, and one for those that want nothing to do with Him. So if you and I'm basically like that. If I see you doing something wrong, I'll tell you you're doing something wrong. But if you
uh,
don't want to hear me out or follow, that's up to you. I mean, you
sure.
can do whatever you want. But you shouldn't really feel sorry for them. There's no point in that.
Well, I think it's more of a sadness that they're not being able to capitalize on the fullness and richness of God, you know. uh,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm a living testament to that. I mean, I by all rights, not having a father growing up, had a very dysfunctional mother growing up. I pretty much raised myself. By all statistical rights, I should have ended up in jail somewhere, living a dead end life, drugs, alcohol, whatever, and he just really had his hand on me. And not that I'm special, I just craved it. I craved the relationship, you
Yeah,
know?
that's the beauty of it. If you want to have that relationship, it's there. And it's
Yeah.
there for everybody.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
if you don't want it, well, that's a whole nother story. I remember dating a girl either last year or the year before. I don't remember, but first of all, I don't really go to churches. I go on special occasions. But as an Orthodox Christian, we believe that we are the church, right? I'm the church. I don't have to go to a physical place. And I was dating a nice Christian lady. She's like, we have to go to church. And there's a specific church that I'm going to, like twice a year and not every year. Like, why do you want to go there? Because I bought a new dress and I want everybody to see me. Like, that's literally not the reason why you should want to go to church. It's not a club. It's not a cafe. It's
Yeah.
not a main street. It doesn't make any sense. And I understood. I didn't judge her because I don't judge people in general, but I just understood that she was basically like a Bible thumper.
Yeah.
There was nothing. She could have parried the words pretty good, and I can't. I really am not much into the Bible. I've read this or that, but I believe that I don't really need to, because as long as you just follow the path that was already laid before you, you'd be fine.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, the devil knows the Bible forward and backward. I mean, it's just a
Every
matter of,
language.
yeah, it's just a matter of memorization. I attended a spirit-filled Episcopal church in Virginia Beach for a number of years, and I was actually kind of on the board. I was in a position called the junior warden. I was kind of in charge of the facilities and, update and stuff. And gosh, I saw these people come in, and I'd see them during the week, and then I'd see them in church, and it was like two different people.
Yeah.
They put on their Sunday face and, praise the Lord, and give you a big hug and everything. And then they'd turn around the next week and screw somebody over in a business deal, and I thought, this is a little hypocritical,
It's a
you know,
lot of hypocrisy.
and it's amazing how flawed we are as human beings. I mean, we're far from perfect, but man, we ought to strive for at least being real and legitimate and being honest with people, and I think that's
Exactly.
what's wrong today, is especially a lot of this stuff on social media. It's just all cosmetic and smoke and mirrors.
I hate telling stories about other people's. I'm just gonna tell this one real quick, but not gonna mention names or anything.
Sure.
A buddy of mine, for a long time, he had terrible luck with women. I don't know, women just didn't want to talk to him for some reason. And he was complaining and bitching about it. I said, listen, man, I can't hear about this anymore. It's just too much. There's this application. I'm not gonna say the name of the application, although I'm pretty sure everybody know about it by now. I just don't make a couple of nice pictures and see if you can match with somebody. And that's exactly what happened. He gave me a call. He said, she's beautiful. She works in the same building, different company, but in the same building. I said, well, all right, well, congratulations, man. So that one Friday afternoon, they went for lunch, and she was like, you want me to come over to your place after work for Friday night? I'm like, yeah. So they were together for Friday night, the whole Saturday night. And yeah, like I woke up Sunday and I went to make coffee and breakfast. It was amazing. And she was all dressed up, and like, where you going? And she told him, well, sex out of wedlock is a sin, so now I'm gonna have to go to church. But I'll see you next Friday, all right? It's not how it works, man.
That's hilarious.
It is. I
Well,
really recommend you, if you have about 2 hours, a little bit more than 2 hours. I'm just watching it here at the screen. A movie called Nefarious. I'll send you a link.
yeah,
And it's exactly how the devil works.
yeah.
It's, if you haven't seen it, it's from last April, and it's about two actors, not very popular, but they did an amazing job. I'm pretty sure you're gonna love it.
Well, the hypocrisy that you're describing was actually a great motivation for me writing my two books.
I was actually about to ask you about
Yeah.
those books, because and that's why the third question is, how did you know that this was the way to go? You kind of covered it with the whole being moved by God, but
Yeah.
in all fairness, David, you've had an amazing career as a police officer, as a bodyguard. You obviously have the imagination, otherwise you wouldn't be involved in animation or producing in general. So you could have done a lot of things, and you said you had 4 bachelor degrees, although I'm very much against bringing that, because a lot of people are going to colleges, universities, and they end up doing something completely different.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
I know, well, I don't know, but I've heard, especially for the US, education is not very cheap.
Yeah.
Like here in Europe, we do have a few crazy expensive universities, but most of them are ridiculously affordable. I went to a private college. Back then I was working as a bartender, and I was able to cover my fees without any problem. All right, bartenders don't happen to earn a lot of money, but it wasn't a problem for me.
Yeah.
This is all over the place. I've studied in Malta, in Denmark, I know people from Greece, from France, from everywhere. So education is not really expensive. It's remarkably affordable. My problem is that you're losing a lot of time if you're doing something that isn't meant for you. Not only you're losing your time, which is a severe problem in my book, you also end up being miserable. Because if you're doing something that's obviously not for you year after year after year, you're gonna end up being a miserable person.
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of okay, I guess, if you're young and miserable, that's fine. But at some point, you're getting married, you have children, you just can't fake it that long. You're gonna
Right.
be miserable, and this will reflect on everybody else, and it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
This is why I actually started the whole program. That's why I'm interviewing professionals like you, because honestly, you could have been doing a lot of things. Data analysts aside, well, data analysis, you said, is just so that you can help yourself here and there, but your
Yeah.
primary focus was the books. Yet you could have done a lot of things. So how did you knew that this was the way?
Well, I got to CBN for Virginia. My wife at the time wanted to work for the 700 Club TV show. And I just kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'm free. I've got a police pension now from my injuries, and I don't have to work. So I'm going to go back and get another degree in something I'm very interested in grad school, which was animation. We got back here. I kind of fell into this bodyguarding job, and I had watched Pat Robertson for years growing up on the 700 Club TV show. He was a very charismatic man. He very appeared to be very godly, whole nine yards. And when we first got introduced, we kind of bonded. I'm 6'5", and Pat was 6'3.5". He liked me because I was taller than him, and I could stand in front of him and take bullets if I had to, as a bodyguard. And
What, 6'5"? They're like 2 meters or something?
yeah, it's 76 inches. I can't convert that to centimeters, but yeah, I'm 6'5" tall, and we just hit it
Yes.
off. And I really believed in what Pat was doing. Is at that time, Christian Broadcasting Network was a ministry, was a TV ministry, and Pat was one of the preeminent televangelists at the time. He was in the era of the Jimmy Swaggarts and the Jerry Falwells and all these other televangelists. But he was doing all these wonderful ministerial things. They had a thing called Operation Blessing. They were one of the first non-governmental organizations. If there was a hurricane down in Louisiana, they had trucks and warehouses ready. They'd be down there within 24 hours feeding people, giving them emergency water and everything, much quicker than the federal government would. They'd take a
Everything
week.
is quicker than the
Yeah.
government.
And Pat was doing this. He was interested in educating kids. He had literacy programs going into the inner cities, doing some wonderful, wonderful things. And I supported that. The CBN 700 Club was made up of people that were giving $20 a month donation to fund it, and they had different levels of giving. I was at one point giving $2,500 a year because I believed in the programs, and it was very exciting to see. But then what happened was, and we all face these forks in the road when we're experiencing life, is he decided to run for president. Well, there's an old saying, don't mix religion and politics, right? Well, here's this guy.
But politics is just so dirty that no matter how
Oh,
you are.
you're making my point for me, my friend.
Well,
Here's
my career started in the government, and I served under 5 different government administrations when I
Oh,
was,
wow.
when I was in the National Railway Infrastructure
Yeah.
company. I was a financial analyst for the European Union network.
Yeah.
So 5 government, so much filth. This is why I'm always criticizing the government, but I'm never taking sides, especially here on the podcast, because if you just say that the government is ridiculously slow, dirty, decrepit, and crippled, no matter which party I'm referring to, everybody agreeing.
You
I
got it.
can tell you that I just described Senator Palpatine from Star Wars, and you'd still believe me, because that's how it is.
I know. And I watched this transformation of the man that I really loved. I would have easily taken a bullet for Pat in the early days. And he went and he decided to run for president. So he starts this political action committee called Americans for Robertson. Now, I started watching this. You know what a microtome is? It's
Not
a
sure.
it's a device used in laboratories. They'll put it's like a little miniature guillotine, and it shaves microscopically thin tissue samples. It just shaves away, shaves away, shaves away. Well, I watched this shaving away of Pat Robertson. Okay, he was this very moral, ethical, focused on humanity religious leader. Politics got the nose of the politics camel got his nose under the tent
Yeah.
and started invading into his life. And and a lot of it was ego driven. I'm sure he envisioned he was going to be the next president of the United States, you know, and people were scared to death of that. Pat Robertson's going to force everybody in America to become a Christian. You know, that was the scuttlebutt, you know, but I watched him and we'd go out we'd go out on these weekend trips and we'd do here's the thing. I hope it's not too complex to explain.
No worries.
Pat Americans for Robertson didn't have a lot of money, but they needed to be competitive against George Herbert Walker Bush, who was running for president as well.
So that
So
was in
88,
88, yeah.
the 88 election. So what they would do is people were always writing into CBN saying, can brother Pat come to my church and, you know, talk to us on Sunday? And he, you know, too busy, too busy, too busy. Well, suddenly he's got to get out in front of the people. So these pastors would write these letters to CBN. Can brother Pat come and say? So what they do is say, let's say somebody from Orlando wants Pat to come down there. So what they would do is they would arrange maybe a dozen and a half political activities, okay, and then one where he was going to go to some little church in Orlando on Sunday morning and speak for 30 minutes. And then they would bill the whole thing to the ministry. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the ministry, in a sense, paying for 19 political events and one little ministry event, which is really in a gray area as far as the Internal Revenue Service is concerned. But on paper, it looked like, well, Pat's going to be in Orlando anyway, talking at this church. So let's do 19 political events. Well, this was a pattern. And then things started getting snowballing. And here's the critical crossroads. Here's where I think things really lost it and was kind of the genesis of my book about Pat. I was sitting in the car with him one morning, and Pat was in the back seat. I was in the front right seat. And on either side of him, one was a guy named Mark Nuttall, who was his campaign manager at the time. And the other guy was a fine gentleman named Rob Hartley, who was the vice president of development for CBN. He was kind of the money person for the ministry. And Nuttall was telling Pat, he says, we need you to give us the 3.5 million names of the donor base for the ministry. We need to start soliciting political campaign funds from these CBN donors. Well, Rob Hartley said, Pat, you can't do that. That's illegal. You'll lose your tax exempt status. You could jeopardize the ministry, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if you're a film buff or not, but it reminded me of the old 1940s and 50s movies where the hero of the story has the devil and the angel on his shoulders,
Yeah.
and they're trying to convince him, whispering in his ear, come over and do my bidding. No, you can't do that. And it was just like, and I'm staring straight ahead, listening to this conversation, and they're all pitching their case to Pat. And finally, there was this moment of silence for about 15, 20 seconds, seemed like an eternity.
Yeah.
And I heard Pat, and he turned to Rob Hartley and he said, give them the list. And it was like somebody slugged me in the gut. And I thought we had just sold our birthright.
Politics
And
is
yeah,
ridiculously dirty. I
yeah.
remember, I know you have secretaries over there. We don't have secretaries, we have ministers.
Mhm.
But that's the equivalent.
Right.
So I was working for a former Minister of Transport. and he's a very charismatic guy. Lord have mercy, I couldn't handle myself because I knew I wasn't going to stay in that sector, so I didn't really bite my tongue or anything. I said, how are you able to just lie like that?
Yeah.
There's no way in hell you can just look yourself in the mirror. I understand it's a reflex for you and everything. How do you do it? Like every single night before I go to bed, I drink about a bottle of whiskey. Otherwise, I can't sleep because this is haunting me. I was 21, 2 or 3, something like that.
Yeah.
He was 37, 8. Now, imagine you don't even have 40. Maybe he was 40, I don't know, but 40 years of age, and you cannot go to bed without drinking a whole bottle of whiskey.
Yeah, something's out
He
of
was
whack.
wealthy. All right,
Yeah.
he had a lot of money. Politics generate a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not. I've done about 100 interviews on this channel so far. I've spoken to a lot of people outside the channel. I have never in my life seen a person be at peace while lying to others or doing messed up stuff like your guy and be okay with himself. You cannot and you will not have this internal peace. You can project whatever you want to the world, but
Yeah.
it's not true. I may not know it, you may not know it, but the person that's doing it, he or she, they will know it. And
Well,
you can't escape from that. That's literally living in hell and being your own inquisitor. And good luck escaping that.
let me reinforce that. The donor base that was given to the political group.
Before you continue, since we
Yeah.
have about a minute, do you mind if I cut it here and send you a new Zoom link?
No, absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Sorry if
we can go back. All right.
We go back to the Pat was in the car and he gave away the 3.5 million name database from the ministry to his political campaign. Rob Hartley told him, he says, Pat, you've made a great mistake here. Fast forward a few months later, that one decision based upon his ego, based upon his desire for power and politics, cost 630 plus people their jobs at the ministry.
Wait, so people actually knew that he did that at some point in time.
What happened was Rob Hartley told him, I'm not a smart man, but I knew this was going to happen. People were donating money monthly to the CBN 700 Club. I was giving $2,500 a year to the 700 Club. Rob Hartley told him, he said, Pat, when people start getting solicitations for your political campaign, a lot of these people are on fixed income. They've got $20 is a stretch for them every month to give to the ministry. Now they're going to see that you're running for president. Half of them are going to get offended and go, well, I'm not going to give him money because shouldn't be in politics. Another group of people are going to go, well, I've only got $20 to give, so I'll take it away from the ministry and I'll give it to his political campaign. The result was when his campaign collapsed and it was obvious he was not going to be president, he came back to CBN like the prodigal son, and 600 plus people had lost their jobs. Money dropped off by 40% that one decision. So I came to this revelation that, this is not, he's off track. He's lost. In fact, I told him, I said, Pat, I said, there's an old saying, you dance with the one that brought you to the dance. You didn't get to where you are in life through politics. You got here through ministry. That has to be your first love. And he just kind of looked at me like, you're just a dumb bodyguard, So what happened, and this is the crux of the book, he started to panic. He started to see his own mortality in front of him. What's going to happen to my CBN, my wonderful love child, the CBN ministry and the school and everything when I die? So he started panicking. He started associating, Denny, and it's all in the book, and I'll send you copies of the book. The book is transitional. It starts off telling a bunch of funny anecdotal stories of what it was like to deal with Pat Robertson, his ego, his arrogance, his naivete in certain areas. Funny stories, what it was like on a daily basis dealing with him and keeping him alive. Then politics hits, and there was this transition. Suddenly, you've got this man that was very godly, very focused on Christ and ministry. We went to Zaire on a trip, and we met with a guy named, and you can Google him, and I can't even spell his name. It was Mobutu Sese Seko. He was put into power by the CIA back in the day and told to just run Zaire any way you want, but just keep peace, because there was a lot of internal warring going on. The guy bankrupted.
It's not a stable region in general, yeah.
Yeah, the guy was a brutal dictator, killed thousands of his people. Anyway, here we are, Pat and I, and a little contingency of about 5 or 6 people over there meeting with this brutal dictator, and Pat is signing. I watched him draft out a contract on a legal pad, and Mobutu signed it. Pat Robertson controlled all the copper mining in Zaire at one point.
Pretty stable income.
He had a massive plan. The copper industry in Zaire at the time was so fragile. Their margins were so narrow because their equipment was antiquated. It cost them so much to pull the copper out and get it ready for market that their margin was like just pennies on the ton. So they weren't making any money. So Pat had a friend of his was a former CEO. I don't know if it was Reynolds Aluminum or Alcoa, one of those big companies. They put together a plan. We were going to raise $1 billion, revamp the copper mining refining system in Zaire, and then portion off huge profits off of that. We literally said, we're on staying at Mobutu's private yacht, which was a refurbished U.S. Coast Guard cutter. The guy's got military guards on pontoon boats with 50 caliber machine guns shadowing him going up the New Zaire River. And this guy's a butcher. He's a killer. And I'm like, Pat, what are you doing with this guy? Well, no, we're going to make a lot of money for. They didn't make anything. He got into diamond minings. He got into gold mining operations with Charles Taylor from, where was it? Liberia. Charles Taylor was brought up on charges in the World Court for crimes against humanity.
Yeah, Liberia is a horrible place even today. It's an absolute hellhole.
Pat Robertson was his business partner. Now tell me something's not out of whack.
That's why, David, that's why I believe that, it's trivial to say it, but at the same point, it isn't. You cannot compromise with evil. There's no, and I know this from my father, right? You cannot compromise with evil.
Right.
That's like saying, I'm a little bit pregnant. You cannot be a little bit pregnant.
Yeah.
Either you are or you're not. I'm a little bit dead. No. Either you have a pot. I'm not talking about those isolated cases when you don't have a pulse and somebody goes with a defibrillator. That's a different thing. But once you're done, and that's it. Normally I don't like to deal with absolutes and everything, but in this case it's okay, because moment you start compromising with evil,
yeah,
you have to have a very thick neck and a very specific character to at some point draw a line and say no more. And that's why I said that the road to hell is covered with good intentions. I'm sure you know this. And Europe has remarkably rich history.
Yeah.
That's why I've always said that the best profession is being a European historian, because you always have something to do. You can never be fired, and you will never be able to learn everything in one lifetime. I'm talking about thousands of years, and for all of those thousands of years, Europe had few decent politicians. One of them is man I truly love and admire. Not much is known about him. He was a general, because back then, in Rome, to be a dictator, and the dictator became a dirty word after the Second World War.
Right.
It's from the Latin word called dictatus, which means the guy that's telling you what to do.
Right.
That's why it's called the dictation, right? Because somebody's speaking and you're writing it down. So Louis Cincinnatus was his name, I believe. He was elected dictator twice, and both times he resigned because the job was done. He was elected to do a specific task. The task was done, and once it was done, he had a beautiful farm, and he just retired over there.
Yeah.
And once they asked him, what's the best way to be a politician, a senator, a general, a dictator? Because those are all people with power. And Lucius always gave that advice that the best man for the job is the one who doesn't want the job.
Yeah.
Now, if you're willing to, and I'm pretty sure the man you're talking about, Pat Robertson, I'm sure he crossed a lot of lines he wouldn't even think of crossing when he was younger and when he was in his prime and doing the ministry.
Absolutely.
But the moment you start crossing lines, you're not coming back. One of the he Quintinius had, I think, 6 or 7 sons. His eldest became a criminal. I don't know for what reason, what drove. Quintinius captured him and prosecuted him the same way he prosecutes everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said. The law is the law, right? It's not written in the Constitution. The law is the law unless you're the son of Quintinius. No, it's a law. Either you will obey it or you will go to jail, and that's it. Just because you're somebody's son doesn't mean you're immune. Not a lot of politicians will do that.
Right. Well, let me tell you a couple more sordid stories. About the same time that Pat was back there, right after his political campaign collapsed like a black hole, he formed this organization called the Christian Coalition. Now, I don't know how much you heard about it in Europe, but it was a big deal. It was a political juggernaut for about a decade here. And what they did was they took all of the assets from his political campaign and formed this group called the Christian Coalition. And he put a young guy in charge of it named Ralph Reed. Now, Reed was a neophyte. He was a political junkie, but he had never run an organization like this. And I always look at it, and I understand the saying now where absolute power corrupts absolutely. He was given charge of this political organization that was supposed to be, the IRS in this country always sets standards for tax exemption and all this and that. And the Christian Coalition was established to be an educational organization. They were supposed to educate people about the voting process and this. And so it actually became a shill for the Republican Party. And that's what was the genesis of my other book. Was I was watching this guy, Ralph Reed, and the guy was just smarmy. I mean, and I don't know if it's because of my police background. I tend to be able to get a good quick read on people and their character,
I know what you mean.
And the minute I met this guy, I wanted to go someplace and get steam cleaned and just make sure I still have my wallet on me, because he just was. He had this real,
yeah.
Now, fast forward from here. Here's a guy that he raised millions and millions and millions of dollars for the Christian Coalition, preaching Christian values, Christian moral, Christian values. He spoke out against alcohol, about gambling, about adultery, about all these other things. And people were throwing money at him. Finally, the Christian community's got a champion fighting for our motives and our beliefs and everything. He ran the Christian Coalition into the ground. He was under pending federal investigations for using it to help promote specifically the GOP. He had done favors for the Bushes. He still is the fair-haired boy. He's still in operation. He runs a thing called the Faith and Freedom Coalition out of Georgia, doing the same thing he did with the Christian Coalition. Anyway, I started writing. He was going to be a chapter in the Pat Robertson book, and I started researching more and more and more and more. And Denny, every time I turned over a rock, something new slithered out about this guy. And it's all in this book. And I wrote the book as if when Reed left the Christian Coalition, I write in the book that he left the coalition like a scalded dog. He fled because he was getting ready to be investigated by the Federal Election Commission. He had destroyed evidence. He had given his buddy no compete contracts. He gave promotional advantages to the GOP worth well over $1 million. It's just corrupt. Anyway, so he goes to work down in Florida trying to be a lobbyist for political people, and he craps out at that. So he contacts his old college buddy, a guy named Jack Abramoff. Now, Abramoff was a high-end Washington lobbyist, and he'd done a lot of work for Indian tribes. If you'll Google Jack Abramoff and look for the Indian scandal, four players actually were big in that. Jack Abramoff, a guy named Michael Scanlon, a guy named Grover Norquist, and Ralph Reed. Abramoff, Norquist, and Reed were all college buddies involved with the Young Republican Party. So they've known each other for decades. Reed writes an email to his friend Abramoff, says, "Hey, now that I'm done with politics, I need some help, quote, humping in corporate accounts."
Oh, Lord.
Okay. So Abramoff sets Reed up with a bunch of do-nothing contracts, getting paid $20,000 a month by Microsoft, by Boeing, just to do this. Okay. They get involved with these Indian tribes. Long story short, and I've got all the evidence in my book. I've got canceled checks. I've got their emails. I've got everything.
Make sure you send me the links to the books, because I want to put them in the description of the video.
I will, and I'll send you hard copies.
Oh, thank you.
Reed got paid $5.4 million protecting a group called the Louisiana Coshada tribe, who were operating a gambling casino in Louisiana, because Abramoff and partner Scanlon told him, "Hey, there's 2 casinos getting ready to open up in nearby Texas. They're going to siphon customers away from your Louisiana casino, cost you millions, but we can shut them down. We've got connections in Texas with Attorney General Cornyn, and Ralph Reed's going to spearhead it." And long story short, they shut down a casino in near El Paso called the Teaguid tribe, had a flourishing gambling casino, the Speaking Rock Casino. They were making $60 million a year on their casino, and they turned that money around helping the indigenous people in their tribe. They were paying for health care for their elderly. They were paying for scholarships for their youth. It was not a bunch of fat cats getting rich. It was helping the Indian community. Ralph Reed helped shut them down. And then he helped keep another casino from opening just across the border. He got paid $5.3 million for doing this, and he laundered his money. I've got proof that he laundered his money, because it wouldn't look good for the former head of the Christian Coalition to be getting paychecks from Indian casinos. So they laundered his money through shell corporations. And I've got the checks in the book to prove it.
I've noticed something, because I've been interested in history, in religion. Not that I just wanted to know what happened. And I'm comparing it to what's happening now, and especially those poorly educated and stupid people in general, not poorly educated, but dumb people in general. Every time you do something wrong, they call you a Nazi. I don't know if that's going in the States, but so with this mess that's going on, across my border with Russia and Ukraine, with the mess that we have in the Middle East now with Israel and Palestine, I have noticed that the biggest enemy of the Muslim is the fake Muslim. The biggest enemy of the Jew is the fake Jew. And the biggest enemy of the Christian is the fake Christian. I haven't done any research about the Buddhists, but I'm almost sure it's the same. And why am I telling you this is because in general, by nature, people are messed up. All right. Whoever tells you that people are good by nature is either lying to you or is being stupid. And you should stay away from those people either way. So in general, people are like that. We are like that. We're messed up. But when we are in society, we are behaving. That's how you actually live long, by keep breathing and behave yourself. I got Muslims around me, I got Jews around me. We do have different beliefs. We never really talk about it because we know this will end up in a conflict. You focus on the things you have in common and never, almost never, on the things that divide you. The church that I've told you about, it's basically between a mosque and a synagogue. That church was originally a pagan temple, and it was converted to a Christian temple by Emperor Justinian I, 15 centuries ago. That's the church I'm going to. We see one another downtown. They know where I'm going. I know where they go. Once we're done, we get together. There are nice cafeterias over there, and we talk about everything else. But I can tell you about my Tinder dates. I can tell you about jokes from the office or anything. And those are relatable, funny situations. Everybody can relate to that. We have a nice time, and that's it. We don't, and those that are pushing this mess, as your guy, the guy that you're talking about, robbing people, messing up people's income, doing basically everything to get rich and then launder it under the mask of Christianity. That's why people don't like Christianity. It's my opinion, although I can back it up, but everybody is free to believe whatever they want. My opinion is that Christianity is the best religion because it's the only religion that highlights that you should focus on yourself. You forgive them, they know not what they see, and not to judge. It's very simple. The alternative is, it's in the Quran, there are guidelines to behave badly against Christians and Muslims. Are everybody doing it? No, because they're not stupid. The point is to have a nice life, and your neighbor, regardless of his religion. I got Muslim neighbors. They do everything, and they're business owners and everything. They do everything for me to feel welcome and nice. Not because I'm that likable, but it's because that's how you build society. It's that simple. You have an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth in the Jewish religion. Well, there are about 109 examples why this isn't going to end well. Because inevitably everybody will be toothless and blind. That's not how you build society.
I'm getting close to that already at my age. Toothless and blind. No, just kidding.
Well, yeah, but at a certain point in time, I guess so. But you weren't in 109 places. So this is why I just wanted to highlight this, that every single time, because I'm talking to a lot of people, and when they're like, the Jews are like that, those are the fake Jews you're talking about. Those crazies that you see on the news from Hamas and Hezbollah, those are the fake Muslims. The guy that you're talking about, that's a fake Christian. That's not a real deal.
Let me tell you one more quick story and show you how fake this guy is. And I'm concerned, Denny, because I need a champion out there. I need somebody to take this book and run with it, because Ralph Reed comes around every 4 years. He's going to be seen in the next couple of months standing next to Trump and promoting all these Republican candidates and stuff like he's some big credible political analyst and spokesperson. The guy is a two-faced, duplicitous weasel. Here's what he did. Here's another thing.
Is it Ralph with PH and Reed?
R-A-L-P-H, Ralph, and then Reed, R-E-E-D. He's all over the internet.
Yeah, he's not that old. He's 60-something.
Yeah. Let me tell you another thing that he did very quickly, and it's in the book.
Yeah.
There's a group of islands called the Mariana Islands. They're a U.S. territory. You don't hear much about them.
No, I don't.
Okay. They house a lot of garment manufacturing businesses over there, because there was a loophole at the time, and I don't know if it's still in place, but the loophole was that these garment manufacturers in the Mariana Islands, because they were a territory of the United States, could put "Made in USA" stickers, labels inside their garments, which meant they were more valuable in the market in the United States.
All right.
Okay. These garment manufacturers were slime balls. They were importing Chinese women, bringing them to the Mariana Islands, keeping them in just squalid conditions, almost like concentration camps, making them work, long laborious shifts in these garment factories, paying them pennies on the dollar. Most of their checks weren't good because there was nowhere to cash them. Okay. And then they would farm, look at this, they would farm these women out as prostitutes at night and then force them to have abortions if they got pregnant. Okay. There was a piece of legislation coming up in the US Congress that was going to hold the Mariana Islands, if passed, was going to hold them to the same regulations as US companies, which meant their gravy days were going to be numbered because they'd start to have to pay union wages and blah, 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 So they hire Ralph Reed through Jack Abramoff to start a campaign, a media campaign against pitching it to Congress, members of Congress and voters, okay, who could put influence on their congressman to not pass this legislation. Reed made millions of dollars. Okay, protecting these garment workers, protecting their slave wages, protecting them, farming out these women for prostitution. And this is the former head of the Christian Coalition who, postures himself as being this high and mighty spokesman for God, whatever, I'm Ralph Reed, former head of the Christian Coalition. He's down there right now in Georgia, pulling the wool over people's eyes. They need to find out what his true self is. He's a maneuverer. He's a I call him the flim flam man for God. Flim flammery. And
those crazy situations, that's a very good thing. And I'm really happy that you're not afraid to do that. So that's
people say,
I'm not really that much against that kind of labor that you just said.
Yeah.
Because in all fairness, if those Chinese women remain in China, they wouldn't be having much of a better life either. I'm not saying it's a good thing to somebody to snatch you from your land and to make you do prostitution and stuff like that. Of course, I'm not for that. I'm highlighting the fact that those places are full with miserable people, and that's why they end up in those situations. So,
well, here's the thing that really got me. Here's the thing, the duplicity is Ralph Reed is a master of smear campaigns and bogus organizations. He sets up these little bogus companies and organizations. And they all have really wonderful religious sounding names. The Alliance for Christian Ministries in China. Sounds pretty impressive, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay. There was no real alliance. It was run out of a public relations business right down the street in Duluth, Georgia, from where Ralph's headquarters were. They did a full page ad using the picture of Billy Graham and the Dalai Lama without permission, by the way. They ran a full page ad saying that, this legislation to hold the Mariana Islands accountable for the same regulations would be stifling the spread of Christianity by these Chinese workers. I mean, it was just a smoke and mirrors campaign. It's lies, and he gets paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do these things. And yet he stands up there just saying, I'm Ralph Reed, the head of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. We need to adhere to Christ-like attributes, and we got to march forward for strong Christian beliefs and all this other stuff. It's just smoke and mirrors. It's not real. And people need to know this about the guy. And people say, aren't you afraid Ralph Reed will sue you? I love it. I love it because it would open up
proof and everything.
It would open up his organization to discovery, and I'd be able to get access to his records and his tax form. Has he been paying taxes on this stuff? I don't know. Maybe he has.
There's this guy, he's in California, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I participate on his program every now and then. Jesse Lee Peterson. I don't know if you know about
Oh
that.
yeah, I've heard the name.
Yeah. He's rather wise, and he has that term be in of the world, but be in the world, but not of it.
Of the world, right?
Yes. And what you're doing is remarkable, and I really congratulate you for that because it takes a lot of energy to do something like that. But the best thing is that you're just doing it because you see it in front of you. You see that's the right way, and you're not doing it out of spite, out of hate. You're just seeing something wrong and you're highlighting, which is perfect.
I enjoy honesty. I think honesty is a lost trait, and I appreciate my wife. Tressa is my second wife. I struggled through a loveless 30-year marriage for the first time and finally met my soulmate. And she's as honest as the day is long. But you know what? She corrects me and she's honest with me in love. And I can accept that. It makes me a better person. But when somebody is standing up there making millions of dollars and influencing millions of voters in the country because they believe that he is the last bastion of Christian righteousness, and yet he's done all of these horrid things in secret. He's guilty of conspiracy. He's guilty of money laundering. He's guilty of fraud. He there was the thing that led to this. There was a Senate investigation in 2004 by Senator John McCain on this entire Indian scandal. Ralph Reed was mentioned over 200 times in the transcript. They've got proof that he laundered money. They got proof that he, did all these illegal things. He was never subpoenaed.
Well, those kind of people were not going to be subpoenaed. First of all, as I said, I had some experience in the government.
Yeah,
I guarantee you, when you hear, so let's just say this guy got $5 million. He really didn't. I'm not defending him. I'm just trying to
right,
explain how the situation is. He received them.
right.
And those 5 million. Now, normally the fee in Europe, and it's obviously not official fee because you can't put official fees on corruption, not yet here. You get to keep 10% of what you have. The rest is going to other places to make sure you will never be prosecuted. That's how it is. So, of course, he's not going to be subpoenaed. Of course, he's not going to be prosecuted.
Well, here's the deal.
Like that.
Here's the deal. And I cover this in the book. Okay. Jack Abramoff, his partner, he got subpoenaed. He ended up going to prison. Michael Scanlon, his partner, there was what I call the unholy trinity.
Yeah.
Was Scanlon, Abramoff, and Reed. Scanlon got subpoenaed. He had to testify. He went to prison. Abramoff had to testify. He went to prison. A whole bunch of underlings below Ralph Reed in the group, they were subpoenaed. They testified. They went to prison or paid fines. Ralph Reed never had to appear. Now, I asked the question, who was in Ralph Reed's sphere of influence at that time who had enough power, political power, to squelch a federal subpoena issued by John McCain? And I came to one conclusion. It was the Bush administration and Karl Rove. Well, I did some digging. Karl Rove was in bed with Jack Abramoff. He would go to Abramoff ran a high-end restaurant in Washington D.C. He comped off meals and wines and everything to Rove. They were good buddies, and Reed probably hit the panic button and said, "Man, I'm going to get subpoenaed. Can you do something?" And they squelched it. He never got subpoenaed. He never made an appearance. So that's what I wrote the book. The book is structured as if there was a second hearing, and I put Ralph Reed in the hot seat. And I use these fictitious senators to ask questions to unveil all of his illegalities. And it's mind-blowing, the depths of depravity with this guy. He is one of the most two-faced individuals I've ever seen on the planet. People need to know about it because he's not credible. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. If he gets up and pontificates about adhering to Christian virtues and Christian morals, it is BS. It is BS, and I've got the proof in the book, and I hope people will read it and realize to start spreading the word on this guy, because he's dangerous. He's dangerous.
That's why I asked you to send me the link to the book so that
I
I can.
will.
And because we have about 6 minutes left,
Okay.
if you have an advice, I'm sure you have many, but one will suffice to the audience. The audience is primarily people that aren't sure if the professional choices they made are for them. What will it be?
You know, it's so funny because we are bombarded now by sight and sound everywhere we go. You see people walking around almost getting run over in intersections because they can't take their eyes off their phone watching TikTok or whatever. My best advice is put that away for a period of time. Get quiet. It says that God speaks in a still small voice. God doesn't yell. God doesn't need to yell. Okay, he speaks in whispers. So tune out the chatter, tune out the ambient noise for a while. Get alone, get in a peaceful place, listen, and ask God, God, speak to me. Where do you want me? What do you want me to do?
Be still and know God.
Exactly, Denny. That's my best advice is get off quiet with yourself and God. God is everywhere. He's universal. He's in your backyard. He's in the shower stall with you in the morning. That's where I do most of my praying. I get the water pouring on me. I can't hear the outside world. And I talk to him. I tell him my needs. I tell him my desires. I thank him profusely for what he's done for me. And it's amazing how well my day will go when I do that. I skip that. I skip that procedure, and the day is full of bumps and bruises.
Yeah.
So that's my advice and always ask questions of people. Okay.
Yeah.
Not in a malicious way, not in an aggressive way, but ask, what is your motive for doing this? Why are you doing these business deals? Or what is your, ask questions, because a righteous man, somebody who's on the right track, they'll answer your questions. There's a quote I use I started this channel called the Flim Flam Chronicles. In fact,
Give me the link for that as well.
Yeah, people can go to the flimflamchronicles.com and they can hear a dozen free 8-minute narratives about all the activities of Ralph Reed that are covered in the book. And Elvis Presley had this great quote. He says, "The truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away." And now I'm resurrecting the truth about Ralph Reed. I'm resurrecting the truth about Pat Robertson in his later years. And I want people to know, don't put these type of people up on pedestals. Don't worship them. They're on the same level as you and I. Okay. Judge a man by the content of the words that come from his mouth in earnest, and the content of his heart.
And the fruits of his labor.
You got it, brother.
With that said, David, thank you, huge thank you for being with me. I'm very grateful that you were able to, give me your time and that you shared all those amazing stories. Please, again, don't forget to send me the links. I want to put them in the description below. Channels, books, social media, whatever you want, so that I can even tag you in social media and so on and so forth. And again, thanks for being with me.
Danny, it's been a real pleasure. I'm sorry it took so long to get connected, and I will send those links to you within the next 20 minutes.
Right on. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Oh. Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.